big swim baits, a lure category that honestly in my entire fishing life I haven't really given a fair shot, but recently in a video where I talked about my fishing goals for this year, I said this. With throwing swim baits, it's supposed to not be easy to do. That is the allure to the swim baits, and I want to experience a little more of that in 2025. So the promise was made to all of you guys, and I fully intend on making my words true by fishing big swim baits this year and hopefully into the future. But of course, in order to actually start throwing and catching fish on big swim baits, you've got to own a few. So I'm gonna go over in this video my exact swim bait arsenal, big baits, smaller baits, hard baits, soft baits, and everything in between. From really budget friendly to super crazy expensive glide baits, I own a few of each, and I wanna break down what exactly is in my swim bait arsenal and whether or not I plan on throwing them this calendar year. My name's Tyler, and this is my swim bait arsenal. Now, before I go deep into my swim bait arsenal, I want to explain why I'm fishing swim baits, because the content creator angler in me that values productivity and catching fish every time I go out in the water says, Tyler, committing to these baits is not smart. And you know what? That's kind of true. But I've been bass fishing for probably 15 years of my life hardcore, and I really haven't explored into new things beyond just catching bass on traditional lures. Now, I have made swim bait masterclass videos talking about the small swim baits all the way to the big glide baits and how to fish each one. But usually I've had to bring in guest stars like the swim bait kid Grant Langmore to explain how to use these big baits, because I don't feel super confident in using them myself. And I hope this year is the year that I actually learn to do that, whether they're $250 or $25. I want to learn how to catch big fish on these baits right here. So I'm going to go through my arsenal, kind of starting with the glide baits, the big baits, and then working my way to the soft baits and kind of the cheaper ones, all while talking about the build design of them, how much they weigh, how much they cost, whether or not I've caught fish on them, and some drone footage showing you, at least to the best of my ability, how I retrieve these baits and whether or not a slow, medium, or fast retrieve is best with each one. Now, again, take all this information I'm about to give you with a grain of salt, because I am not a swim bait intensive angler. I hope to get that way, at least to some extent, as I learn about these and catch fish on them throughout the year and probably lose fish on them. So I don't exactly know all the right answers, but I'm going to explain everything I know about these baits. So we're going to start with the very expensive ones, and a company that took a chance on me years ago by giving me a few free baits, and that is Pis Customs, P-I-Z-Z. Awesome company. The guy who makes these things has been making them for a long time. This here is the original Shadley bait. He no longer makes this one anymore. I believe it's 4 ounces and 8 inches long. It imitates as you can tell, a big shad. Hopefully my camera will focus there. Yes, a big gizzard shad. It is a fantastic lure because it casts really far, it casts really well, and it glides side to side. Like I said, it's 8 inches long, has a soft rubbery tail, but it's not too soft that in the heat it will melt. This thing has kind of stayed consistently good over the years. I've got some quad treble hooks on here right now. Now, one thing I've learned about swim bait fishing is that the hooks and sometimes split rings you use really matters in the way that it was designed. So if you have bigger hooks than what the bait was designed for, it won't actually function. It won't have the same retrieve style as what the bait maker intended for it. So I don't know if the Pis Shadley needs quad swim bait hooks, but I put them on there because I think they're awesome. This thing has a relatively fast sink, and like I said, it retailed at $250. One of the most expensive swim baits I own, and it's just a big fish catcher. It draws fish from long ways away. I've caught fish mostly on this before I started filming all my adventures, so I will be throwing this thing more and more in 2025 and in the future, but it's just a big glide bait. Now, it's not as big as you can get. There's 10, 12-inch glides that are 7, 8 ounces. This here being 8 inches and 4 ounces is not huge, but it has some good drawing power. And as far as retrieval goes, it works at practically every speed, I would say, except super fast. It kind of tends to roll over as you're twitching it really fast or burning it back to you. Most of the time, if you just kind of use a medium to slower retrieve, it can either kind of glide, or call it a chop glide, where you take your rod tip and you chop like this. It can kind of chop well, or you slow glide like this, retrieve, and it really has a good kicking out action. It kind of glides. It continues to drift out from the place where you stop it, that some other glides I'm going to talk about don't really have the same action. So there's a reason these things are so expensive, because they are built in such a way they are very versatile. So that's the Pis Shadley. We're going to put all these to the side. The second one is going to be, I believe it's called the Piizz Drift, and this is a smaller bait. It is 7 inches, I believe, and 2.8 ounces as compared to the Shadley, Again, you can see the size difference there. And this one here is more so a tournament-oriented bait. So if you want to throw a swim bait in tournaments for 5 fish limits, but still have a chance to catch 2 to 3 pounders instead of just larger fish, this is the bait for you. I know that Paul told me that the smallmouth community loves this glide bait, and it works really, really well, as you can see in the drone shot, from basically any retrieve speed. So the chop, the slow glide, and the wide, but it does not go as wide as the Shadley does. It's just a super versatile bait. Still though, retails at $250, and at 2.8 ounces, it's a relatively heavy bait. So I would recommend, we're gonna talk about gear at the end of this video, from rod, reel, and line. You wanna throw it on like a 7.4 heavy or anything above that. So a really good glide bait. I'm probably gonna throw this one more this year than I will the Shadley, but if I want to get deeper into you know, 10, 12, 15 feet, I may reach for the Shadley over this one. Now, staying on the vein of glide baits, we're gonna go a lot cheaper. This here is the Storm Arashi Glide. So I have used the Arashi over the last few years. I think it retails, let's find out what it is here, $40. So for glide baits, pretty good price. It's very well built. Of course, the colors are mass-produced painted as opposed to in the garage. So as compared to the smaller Piz here, you can just tell this one had a lot more attention to detail to it than this one does, but oftentimes fish don't really care. I'd say super clear water, you want a really realistic thing to whatever forage, you know, matches the forage the fish are going after. But for the most part, in dirty to stain water, the Arashi is good enough. And I really think this bait here only works, at least in all my testing, in that slow to medium retrieve speed. It does have a good drifting side-to-side action, but it seems like when you stop the retrieve, it'll go left and then kind of stop. It doesn't drift as far as either one of the Piz baits do, and so that's why I prefer those, even though they're crazy expensive as compared to this. But if you're just getting into swim bait fishing, this one or the River to Sea S-Waver, they're both kind of good. I know $40 doesn't sound budget, but as far as the swim bait community goes, they absolutely are. And so I would recommend throwing one of those for your first ones. I have not caught a whole lot of fish on this, but I know Carl Jacobson, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro, I'm sure you've seen B-roll on the screen of his catches. He loves this glide bait, and he's caught some big fish all the way from New York and Canada down to Tennessee and down to Florida on this exact glide bait. They also make a swimmer version, and just kind of talking about the difference real quick between glides and swimmers. Glide baits are usually single jointed, so they have 2 main sides, maybe a tail that's not connected, but most of the time it's just 2 sides. A swimmer has 3 or more, so this here, we'll talk about it next, pretty soon here, being the Riot Crank. This one here is a swimmer style, not a glide bait. Totally different action, totally different retrieve style. So that's the difference between a glide and a swimmer, is the 2 versus 3, kind of from a layman's term. So those are the cheaper glides that I own. I still throw this one, especially in like really snaggy stuff from the bank, as opposed to these. You will never see me throwing a Pis Customs bait from the bank where I can't go retrieve it. That sounds like a horrible idea. And the last 2 glides I want to talk about real quick are smaller glides, one of them being baitfish oriented and the other one being bluegill. So we have the standard Jackal Gantarelle. Now I know I said that 3 equals a swimming bait, and this one has 3 sections. I still think with the size of this one, I think the Gantarelle Junior, it is, yes, $39.99 at retails. It is 1.5 ounces, which as far as swim baits go, this is like the smallest level. It hardly weighs anything, it's only 5 inches, and so is it a swim bait? Yes, but is it daunting to throw? I really wouldn't say so, but it's one of the best budget-friendly bluegill swim baits out there. They come in really good colors. Jackal does a fantastic job at making this bait. They got a feathered treble hook on the back. And as far as versatility, it is a slow float. So it does not get into deeper water to fish, but what you can do is you can add a drop shot weight, kind of clipped with a split ring or a snap swivel to the front there, and it will weight the nose down. So especially in the spring or on bed fishing, that kind of thing, you can actually nose your Gantarelle down into the bed, and this thing is a bed fishing specifically slayer, but it catches fish all throughout the spring in the shallow, grassy and woody lake. So that's the glide per se of the Gantarelle. The other one is one that I picked up in Toledo Bend from the guy who makes it himself. I don't even know his name, I forgot it, but I met him. Me and Alton Jr. both bought one, and it is the Balls Out Shad. I think it is, I mean, if I'm comparing it to the Gantarelle, probably about the same, 1.5 to 2 ounces, so really not that big. It is just a 5-inch glide bait. And as compared to some of the footage you've seen on screen of baits that at a slow retrieve really glide side to side, this here is not one of those baits. This here is basically just a chop bait. So you cast it out there next to shallow cover, the edge of grass, the side of a dock, and you are just chop, reel, chop, reel, chop, reel, chop, reel. And this thing, I mean, really, really well. We're gonna talk about one more soft bait that does it equally as good, but this thing just chops side to side, side to side, side to side. Looks like a fleeing little gizzard shad or a bigger thread fin. And this thing was $150 when I bought it. I don't know if he even sells, I think they call balls Out Shad, if he even sells it online or if it's just in person, but this guy makes a really cool glide bait. And as soon as I saw it in the pool, I said, I have to have one of these. Have I caught one on it? Not yet, but I plan on it soon. So I think that's all the glide baits besides some soft ones. We'll talk about those here in a second that I have. The next few are going to be, well, this one is actually the only crankbait style swim bait I have, but this here is the Pis Customs Riot. I believe it also retails for $150, $250? Yes, $250. It is 3 ounces and 7 inches. And again, having 3 sections, it is a swim bait, not a glide bait. So it really works perfectly at a slow retrieve to a medium retrieve. I think I burned this thing under the drone shot. It didn't look too good, super fast. Maybe it's because of the bill. And again, he designs this thing for a specific reason. So I could be wrong on the retrieve, but this thing seems like it's a good bait to fish around flats. So big mud flats, grass flats, clear water. Probably better with this, but heck, it's got a bill, so it can get down there into the depths. And again, I wouldn't throw this anywhere that I could snag it on like stumps, but with the bill, maybe it's meant for that. So again, a bait that he gave me a long time ago that I feel bad for not throwing it at $250, but you're gonna see it sometime this year. I hope to catch a big one on this coming shad spawn time of the year, especially when they're feeding on big gizzard shad here in Texas. Now, I've got 2 baits here that are actually, I've got 3 that are top waters, but I would still consider them in the swim bait category because they're so big. The first of which being the Spro BBZ Rat. This here, I've caught, I think 2 or 3 fish over the years on it, not in a few years, but it looks fantastic in the water. It is a floating bait, and I believe this one is 1.5 ounces, and with a tail, it's 7.5 inches, but I mean, honestly, that's like a 4-inch bait if you forget about the tail. And it looks really good in the water, casting it out there and just retrieving it straight back to you. Again, just like the other swim baits in the category, a gliding, chopping action is not really needed. Just retrieving it straight back to you is fantastic. I wanna throw this more. I wanna throw John John's crawlers more in 2025. A whole lot of baits that I wanna throw more of that are kind of in the top water category, but none of which I wanna catch fish more on, just based on the pure excitement factor of the explosion and how big of a fish it can catch, than the big walking bait. Here we have the Strike King Mega Dog, and we have the Lunker Punker. Alton Jr., my best friend, gave me this bait. I think Taylor and I were looking, and they retail for like they resell for like $500 to $700, and depending on the condition they're in. This is not in the best condition, but it is a wood bait. It's the old-fashioned, traditional, standard Lunker Punker. I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness even owning this bait. Alton said if you ever lose it, you're in big trouble. So I'm not gonna do that, hopefully, but this thing excels on a big chopping retrieve to make this top water go douche, douche. And I say douche because it's like, it almost feels like a porpoise. It's like coming out of the water and gliding side by side. And I have not caught a fish on this. You might say, well, Tyler, it's a walking bait. How is it a swim bait? Because it's ginormous. So yes, the Lunker Punker is a swim bait, and the Mega Dog is just a cheaper alternative to that. The Punker is silent. The Mega Dog is not, so that could play a factor in certain water conditions and fish behaviors, but I really want to catch fish on this thing in 2025. So that is my entire box of hard baits. We have a whole Evolution bass sack here full of soft baits. Let's go over these real quick. Now, one bait that was actually in my box that I forgot about, my swim bait box, is the Magdraft. I have thrown this thing for years and years. Y'all have seen it on the channel. It was probably not the original soft plastic pre-rigged paddle tail swim bait, but it was the most widely known one and still is. I have the 8-inch version here, and I have, I believe, a 6-inch, yeah, a 6-inch version right here, my favorite color being the straight pearl. And this is just kind of the industry standard, at least as far as like access Americans can get to them. I know some Japanese companies make these that potentially are even better, but as far as we can buy, this here is the best you can get. Both of these, the 6 and the 8-inch, work really well at practically all retrieve speeds, when you get to super fast, it will actually kind of, as you're retrieving it, it can turn over and burn to the side. And so a slow to a medium retrieve is best with this thing, but it really sits best in like the upper 6 feet of the water column. If you're trying to go deeper than that with a paddle-tailed pre-rigged swim bait, in my opinion, you have to go with the Huddleston style. Now I say it's in that category because that's what Butch Brown made well known, is creeping a Huddleston top-hooked pre-rigged swim bait, not a line through, just a big old beefy hook on the top, crawling the thing across the bottom and catching giant bass. And that's where I think Chris Zaldain with this swim bait here tried to design his bait after, and he succeeded. I have caught a big handful of bass on this thing, both the 6-inch and the 5-inch. It is a pre-rigged swim bait, but it is not pre-rigged in the sense that it has like a harness on the inside that has a weight to it. It is actually a line through bait. So you stuff the line through, and the flipping hook that he has in here, when you set the hook, the flipping hook comes out. That way the fish cannot shake the whole bait. They just shake the hook. And so this thing, you can creep it across the bottom. It's relatively weedless for having a huge hook on the top like this, but I have caught some big fish just slow crawling this thing across the bottom of the lake. So those are my main 2 swim baits I've used as far as the pre-rigged category goes for just casting and retrieving. Now, Strike King recently released the final copy, and they named it Final Copy because they understand it is a copy. There's lots of baits out there for crankbaits and topwaters and jigs, but there's not a whole lot of baits that are like this. And so you kind of have to make one that looks somewhat similar. And Strike King did just that with the Final Copy, but it's still a good bait. So it's not like the Final Copy just took all the features and made the exact same thing. They tweaked it a little bit because the sizes are different. We have a 6-inch and a 4.5. Not many of these style swim baits come in a 4.5. But the biggest thing is that it is a heavier bait. I cannot get this thing to act right in the water at a medium or a fast retrieve like I can the Zaldangerous and the Magdraft. It has to be slow crawled across the bottom. And the problem with that is that the hook is on the bottom. And so it is not a very weedless bait at all. And so my buddy Rick Harris, who's a guide in Texas, he recently messed around with, I'll take it out here, with putting the treble hook on the top. And luckily Strike King thought about that. And so they designed a section on the top here near the front. Taylor, can you see that right there? That you can actually put the treble hook with the swivel and just move it to the top and hook it right up there. And so I have not messed around with that yet. I hope to here in the not too distant future. And that allows you, just like the Zaldangerous, again, the Huddleston style, to have the hook on top and you can bump it across the bottom. And so especially if this thing is meant to be retrieved at really slow speeds in deeper water, I really want to try this thing with a top hook as opposed to a bottom, because I haven't been super impressed yet with especially the fishability and not snaggability of the bottom hook. And the last part of the soft swim bait category is going to be soft glide baits. Now my buddy John, who again makes the crawlers and other baits, one cool duck bait coming, y'all will see here on the channel, sent me these 2 baits here. One is the Megabass, and actually y'all can't see that, the package got foggy. It is the Megabass IU Twitcher, and it's a soft plastic glide bait. I believe it's 7 inches, 1.5 ounce. I couldn't find any of these for sale besides one on eBay for like $20. I know they retail usually for more than that, but I have not been impressed with this bait. Even though it's a very good looking bait, like the design, the color's fantastic, beyond just a very slow kind of chop across the top of the water, making it go like this, I have not found it to be good for just kind of slow swimming or really wide glides. And even chopping, I really don't think this thing is the best chop bait out there. I know Berkeley makes one called the Nessie, and both of these are knockoffs of G-Flag's larger size. Again, I'll have it on the screen here. G-Flag is the, I think, kind of originator of the soft glide bait. And I know Grant Langmore has caught some big fish on the G-Flag. So this thing being a relative knockoff, at least what I've understood, it doesn't quite fish the same. I'm probably not gonna throw this one a whole lot, may even give it away to one of you guys, unless you can educate me in the comments as to how to fish this bait better. But as far as the soft glide bait that I love and adore, and I've thrown a decent amount of, and that is this one right here, the G-Flag 150 Gill. This thing, I mean, I hope the drone shot does it justice, because at whatever retrieve speed you want, ultra slow, like a swim bait, a medium retrieve, a super fast burn, or just a twitch, just like that Balls Out Shad I showed you earlier, the hard plastic one, or the resin one. This bait right here is just fantastic. I've caught fish in ponds and lakes on this thing. It is a relatively durable soft plastic bait. Now I'm not gonna pull it too hard because I'm sure it could rip with a little bit of strength there, but I have still not broken one of these, and I'm about 5 fish into each one of these, so I assume it can handle 10 plus fish depending on the size. It just comes basically ready to, out of the package, to cast it out there, and no matter how you want to retrieve it, it catches fish. So I have the shad pattern here, and I have the bluegill color here. I believe they retail for $65 when they release on Tackle Warehouse or the Hookup Tackle or whatever. Yeah, $65. And again, it just is a fantastic swim bait that I'm gonna throw more of. I'm so excited because hopefully you're gonna see some videos of swim baits in the future with this thing featured right here. So that's kind of my overall swim bait arsenal. I didn't go over the price on all those. I'll have them linked down in the video description, but I wanna talk real quick about the gear that you need to throw a swim bait, what I'm gonna be using for both of the categories, the big glide baits and the smaller soft baits in 2025. So I've got 2 combos right here. A Lew's Super Duty 300 with the Super Duty rod. It's a 711 heavy fast action, or fast action, and 20-pound fluorocarbon. Then I've got a Lew's Signature Series 7.5 medium heavy fast action, again for all these softer baits, and same thing, 20-pound fluorocarbon with a BB1 reel. I think this thing can handle the big glide baits, but it really handles well these smaller baits. So that's kind of the 2 combos I have right now. I am not married to either one of these combos. I am married to Lew's, for the combo being a Lew's combo. But if you have any suggestions on the power or the action of swim bait rods that you like, I'm all ears down in the comment section below. But that's what I've been using for most of my small and large size swim baits. And I feel like right now is a good time to tell you that you're gonna see a decent amount of these and a decent amount of these, and hopefully 24, which is a pretty decent amount, of brand new swim baits I may have never fished before in a brand new series here on the channel. I'm doing 1 video every month, and it's just gonna detail my swim bait journey. I don't know what the name of the series is gonna be, but it's gonna detail my journey from maybe understanding 25% of the swim bait game to hopefully understanding 75% of it and catching some big bass. So once a month, you're gonna see a swim bait video brought to you by swimbaits.com, an awesome website where you can buy and sell your used swim baits, and they will do some specific drops from homemade boutique swim bait companies on that website. They're gonna send me 2 swim baits a month, a hard bait and a soft bait, and it's my goal to learn as much as I can about them, teach you guys, and catch at least 1 fish, hopefully a big one, on each one of those baits every single month. So this video is kind of the start to that series. If you have a name suggestion for me, I would say from like 2 to 5, maybe 6 words, similar to my 200 ponds or 10 days for a 10. If you have an awesome swim bait journey title for that series, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm excited to begin this journey. Again, I will have all my tackle linked in the video description. If you have an awesome swim bait you want me to fish, and I can recommend that to the swimbaits.com guys to put in my monthly box, make sure you also put that down in the comment section below. I am pumped for this swim bait journey, and hopefully y'all are as well. My name's Tyler. That's enough talking. We'll see y'all next time right here on TRF.